3, 2, 1. Nope, I messed up. Let's start that again.
Okay, count faster. You always have this problem.
What's wrong with 3, 2, 1?
No. There's nothing wrong with 3, 2, 1.
What's wrong with 3, 2, 1?
No. Count faster. It's much easier to, and you never keep it consistent.
Okay.
Holy shit, dude.
Are we ready? Sky, have you exit out whatever the other thing
I deleted the.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah,
Good. All right. Let's do this again. 3, 2, 1. Welcome to the Lightforge. This is Adwukta.
This is Merps. Hope you guys are all doing well. Much better than Adwukta's growth on his chin, hopefully.
Hey, this is looking better and better every day, man.
It really is not. That is a bold-faced lie. We have a special guest with us today. Please welcome the creator of Arena Drafts and also the technical director of the Lightforge tier list. Welcome to the podcast, ZDMan. How's it going?
Doing great.
All right. So it's the big reveal. Everything is out. How does it feel to reveal yourself to the world?
Feels good.
So if you didn't know, we basically haven't talked about who was doing the algorithm work because we're not doing any of the technical work. We come in with the ideas and some equations and some formulas. But to get the whole thing up and running, we've been relying on our technical director ZDMan here for like 4 years now, and we'll get into the whole story and why we're doing the reveal now rather than like 4 years ago. But before that, let's do some like quick arena bookkeeping before we jump to the algorithm stories.
Yeah, first I want to touch upon the Arena leaderboards. The leaderboards just came out on Friday. Congratulations. This was for the period of April 8th to June 30th. We see a lot of familiar faces, but I especially want to give a shout out to Boozer, who we've been talking about, and his recent advocacy for the Arena, mostly because he got number 2 on this leaderboard, which means in the past 4 leaderboards, he's gotten number 1 and triple number 2s. That level of consistency is insane, and
it's
it ranks among. Yeah, no
one's done this before.
No, we're looking at one of the greatest Arena accomplishments ever in terms of number 1 and triple number 2s. And I know we always joke that someone like Collins keeps on getting number 2s, but this level of consistency and excellence, especially in a meta in which some people just throw their hands up and say, "Oh, everything's random," right? Boozer just proves everyone wrong and says, "Well, there's tyrants, there's things generated by, but I'll show you that skill still shines through." So congratulations, especially to him, but to everyone else that I'm just not going to mention.
Oh, you're not going to list names? I thought we were going to give some shout outs.
We can give shout outs.
Come on. People want their names spoken.
You really think people care?
I think of the amount of the people who are on this Arena leaderboard, a disproportionate amount of people are listening to this podcast.
Congratulations to Tarkham, who was number 1 at 8.9 average wins. We have Dreads at number 8 with an 8.06, showing that, just like in BGs, he goes top 8 in Arena as well. We have some other streamers, but we also have some other viewers as well. I'm not going to go down the list. All right, Isherwood is here at number 42. Right. Congrats to everyone who made the leaderboard.
Okay. And if you're wondering where we are, I think we might not have played enough arenas to get on. I don't know what the limit is, or maybe we just sucked because neither of us are on here, and I haven't been tracking. So I don't really know what our score is. What's the lowest? What's number 200? What's the actual number?
Oh, number 200 is 6.76.
Yeah, okay. I'm definitely higher than 6.76. So we didn't hit the minimum number of runs that are needed, which is not unusual for us.
Did not.
What is the minimum number? Do we know?
It's 30.
It's 30
months.
over the course of 4 months.
No, it's from April. I just said the
Yeah.
dates.
Sorry, is that 3 months or 4 months?
I don't know.
Sorry, I can't math good. Well, it's okay. All right. I mean, that makes sense. Because arena coops are done on a different account, so we have to play individual runs up to that much. Okay, great. So leaderboards are finally out. Moving on. Back to ZDMan and the arena tier list. So I guess the first question that we should start with is tell us a little bit about yourself. I think up until now, publicly, people only know you as the creator of Arena Drafts, which we've been using for a long time now. But yeah, tell us who you are.
So I'm Scott. So I'm a developer professionally, and so I've been doing Arena Drafts since, when did I do that? Right before, about 6 months before the Lightforge tier list website went up, and then I've been doing that since.
Cool. And you survived. You've been working with Advocta for all this time.
Yeah.
And you are still one piece. Oh my gosh. Yeah, guys. If you think it's bad to play with Advocta, you do not know working with Advocta. Now, we're not going to make this podcast a 2-hour kind of like therapy session for Scott, even though he might need it. But I would just like to give a round of applause for surviving 4 years with Advocta, okay? I am one of the people who knows what an incredible and mentally challenging feat this is. So
there's only been 3 people in this entire world who has worked with me for 4 years or longer, and that is Merps, ZDMan Scott, and nope, that's it. Actually, I was gonna say brand new, but she hasn't hit 4 years.
No. Yeah. Get in line, brand
new. Get in line, brand new.
I'll say that there's a learning curve to figure out his thinking process.
Wow, that's...
We don't have to sugarcoat it, man.
I was about to say, that's putting it really lightly.
It's terrible. Oh, God.
So to do the algorithm, what Scott has to do is to take my ramblings and my equations and formulas, which are mostly right but sometimes wrong, and sometimes just doesn't fit into how the algorithm is actually working. Like, I'll think the algorithm works one way, but it doesn't. And then turn that into something that's actually functional. And that's I mean, you know, I'm not kidding when I say Scott knows how my brain works. Probably like one of like the top, I don't know, handful of people in the world. Just from working so close together on this.
Yes. So, all right, let's just back up a second. Let's get started. Scott, you obviously know about Arena. You obviously have played some. Mm-hmm. Take us back to the beginning. How did you get started with Hearthstone, and what got you interested in Arena?
So it actually goes back before Hearthstone. In college, I played a ton of Magic the Gathering. I played it pretty competitively, played in a local shop, and then went and did I forgot what they're called, the regional things that you go compete at. And I really loved drafting in Magic. And so was it right after Nax I really got into Hearthstone and started getting into it. And Constructed was okay, but it wasn't as fun as being able to play a limited format like Arena. And then after that, I caught you guys and just kind of started following you guys, and kind of went from there.
All right. So how did you end up with us? Like, working with us, right? Not just watching us like those losers in the chat right now. Okay. How do we actually end up working together and torturing you for 4 years of your life?
Do you want to do part of that, Highway?
Yeah, I mean, you tell me from your perspective first, and then I'll fill in. I'll fill in the rest
from the victim's perspective. Yeah. Okay.
So you had the split with Earth Arena.
Yeah.
And then I can't remember exactly how y'all portrayed it, but you were talking about getting some developers to help you with the algorithm. And so I think I submitted something to you early. But at that point, I don't know what y'all were thinking, but I started working on arena drafts at that point as both kind of a here's what I can do type of thing, and also just a project. I like to work on projects a lot. That portraying to something I was enjoying a lot, which was Arena in Hearthstone. And then in the spring, you contacted me, and then we started working from there.
Yeah, I mean, timeline wise, that's right. But so before, and I don't know how many people even knew this, but so after the Hearth Arena split, we were going to make our own tier list, and I wanted to make an algorithm, more complicated algorithm, to actually do the tier list itself, not just to take because what Hearth Arena does is they take a tier list, and like a tier list that someone does by hand, and then adjust the scores for to build a deck. So I wanted to start at even basic level, and if you start at a more basic level, you can get a better drafter. Everything's more precise. And as we go through this journey, we learn so much stuff. Like we literally started this with things like, what is a charge? What would a charge attack be worth? Well, I don't know, maybe it's 1.75 what a regular attack is worth, right? And what's deal 3 damage to something? Maybe that's double what a normal attack on a minion is worth. And we just started with those, and we tried to make things work. This was before, and by now the algorithm is doing something way more complicated than that. It's not just putting multipliers on things. But at this point, I was thinking we're just going to put multipliers on things the way we had done with Hearth Arena, and it was going to make a good tier list. And when it did not make a good tier list, doing that right off the bat, I realized that this rabbit hole of how fundamentally the Hearthstone or Magic the Gathering, all these games, how fundamentally they worked different. So we tried to get some people to do this before, actually, and we had a lot of interest. There was over 100 resumes came in, and so initially I looked over Scott's resume and I was like, oh yeah, that's fine. But I have a bunch of people with doctorates and people with just ridiculous people. Why are you trying to work with us on a children's card game? And we eventually worked with some people to try to get a tier list up, and it became pretty clear the amount of time and effort that people are willing to dedicate, and you need a lot of dedication to this to kind of make it work. In addition to technical skills, and it didn't work out, and we got to the point where we're like, okay, we need to move on from that and do something different. And at that point, rather than go back to my huge pile of resumes to see who else is available, I looked at what ZDMan, what Scott was doing, in that he wasn't working with us, but he was already making arena drafts. I downloaded it, I played around with it, it worked fine. He was clearly interested, and it was clearly he just showed a lot of initiative, not bothering us and trying to work with us initiative, but just doing his own thing, right? And so if you can do that, I think that's a pretty good sign that you can create something else. The ability to create something and manage something for yourself, it's different than a lot of other things, and that's what we needed. And it's worked out really great since then. From day one, it was I think the first thing we did is I spent 10 2-hour sessions teaching you the algorithm in my head. After you got so step one, I think we made Scott get a tier list up, just onto a website. Yeah. And it pretty much looks like what it looks like now. And it was really quick work. It was great work. And it just we wanted it to look a certain way, and he got it done. And after that was 10 2-hour sessions to try to download what I know about this game into Scott's head before he could even start creating the basis for how the algorithm was going to work. So that's from my perspective. That's what's what happened with the beginnings of the algorithm. Because for the entirety of sorry, go ahead.
I was gonna say the first thing I did was I wrote the website in 2 weeks.
Yeah, because we wanted it up before an expansion launched, and the other guys like basically were telling me that they couldn't do it, and they had like 3 months, and I was like, okay, well, Scott, I don't necessarily need it for 2 weeks. It doesn't necessarily need to be great, but can you do it? And he was like, oh yeah, I don't know if it'll get fully done, but we could put something up there that looks good. And it turned out to be, this is like pretty much the final product that it's been at.
Patched it a little bit.
Yeah, there's been some updates, there's been some things, but overall, like you got done in 2 weeks with 2 people. We were trying to make a team. We started with 2, and we were trying to add more, but with 2 people, couldn't do in 3 months. So
I remember that. So I was pretty hands off during this process, and I do remember we were working with 2 people that on paper were extraordinarily qualified, right? But if you know Adulta, and those of you guys listening and watching, you know that, all right, number 1, he is very intense about things. And number 2, he has a very special way of communicating things and having certain assumptions that you might think are ridiculous. And so these are sort of the major hurdles that anyone working with us, really working with Adulta. This is the algorithm is basically Adulta's mind distilled into a website. And anyone working with them, they have to basically be able to withstand just the jungle, the thicket of nothingness, but everythingness that is in there.
Okay, but at this point, we're just making a website. So there wasn't there wasn't that much understanding to do.
No, there was not a lot of that. But I mean, people are hearing 10 2-hour sessions.
Oh, yeah. What happened afterwards?
At this point, I just have to ask Scott, what did you think of him after those sessions? Because you had to have been at least somewhat confused.
Oh man. So it was rough. Like, the first year.
I remember we had some chats.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you have to realize with Adulta is that what you think he's thinking is not what he's thinking.
Yes, he'll say something, and if you guys remember like our co-ops and plays, he'll say something, but he actually means something else, and he'll get frustrated that you didn't understand that, like, well, when I said X, I meant Y, and obviously it was clear. I'm like, no. If you wanted me to do Y, you needed to say Y, or not like Z, and for me to implicitly understand that Z is actually your special way of saying Y, or something. Just really weird.
There was a lot of question asking on things, and then me realizing I needed to devote another half hour into this thing that I thought was kind of either implied or like already part of something else. And I was like, oh no, I guess it's not like explicitly part of something else. I remember that it was initially supposed to be 6 sessions, and it went to 10 because we kept adding stuff. That I was like, oh yeah, this was here, right? And you're like, wait, no, but how does this concept connect to that concept? I was like, oh, I did not explain how those 2 concepts connected. let me figure out how to do this.
Yeah.
And it was pretty complicated, and you have to deal with Adwood's type of personality, and what I ended up having to do is I had to record all our sessions so I could go back and break down what he was saying.
That's
and ask him
terrible. This is like the worst college class, and you have to record it, and you have to rewatch it and take notes. I'm sorry, man.
And that was the easy stuff.
Well, it was just easier to do that than because we were trying. It was hard to get together and have these long sessions and then go work on things. So it was also helped by more of a time management, because then I could go back and see what exactly he said and then go ask him in chat without having to have another video call about it.
Yeah. So right now, in case you guys are wondering, there will be no way to teach this thing in 10 2-hour sessions. It will be more like 28-hour sessions. Like, I think you could get the job done with 20 like 8-hour sessions, like a whole month worth of like work to like impart this entire algorithm to somebody or an organization or whatever, because it really did grow from there. That was the basics. That was like the fundamental. This is how tempo works. This is how card advantage works. Here's how tempo works when we give it initiative. Like, this was fundamental stuff. And remember, the game was easier back then. Like, the game was just simpler back then. We were on, we were done with Nax, we had GVG, BRM just came out, TGT hadn't even come out yet, and that set us back because obviously when TGT came out, hero powers became a much bigger thing than they were before that, and so we had to, that was a side, like, if you were following Hearthstone before TGT, you didn't think much about how hero powers interacted with stuff. Like, not in the same way when it affects tempo and card advantage and things like that than after TGT. So we had to then build hero powers really directly into it. And then they got even crazier with hero powers later on, and we had to upgrade that system a number of times. Like, I think that's a lot of what happens afterwards. Like, we do something, we realize that we weren't doing it as sophisticated or as in-depth or quote-unquote right as we should have been doing, and then we like just make the systems go 2 layers deeper to take into account the new cards, and it slightly adjusts a bunch of older cards that existed.
Yeah. So, Scott, let me ask you, like, when you first started this project, arena drafts, and then later on, whatever the heck you were doing with Advocta, what was your kind of goal here? Like, what did you seek in terms of whether, like what you want to do with the product or just what you wanted in general?
So I always worked on side projects since I've been programming since high school. So I've always just kind of had, like, my very first thing, I made a chess program and learned how to make games. And so before I started doing the Hearthstone stuff, I worked on a 2D game engine with someone else who had created it. I helped them build out some features. I think I added a plugin system for it. So I just kind of always enjoy doing some sort of project. And the algorithm just seemed appealing, and doing more website work because that was related to my job. I am a full developer, website developer. And I wanted to add that I do have a what do you call it, bachelor's degree in computer science. So I'm just kind of into that kind of thing. So that's just kind of more of a big hobby.
I think that's pretty cool how that sort of brought you, unfortunately, into the same path as Advocta. But no, it's been pretty interesting, I guess, digging into the games, right? I think some people like playing the game. I think for a lot of us, we like sort of dissecting the game, thinking about the game. We all of us play it as well, but I think for us, in order for us to have worked on this thing for a long time, it's like you need to be really interested in breaking it down, finding pleasure in kind of being able to quantify, being able to be like, oh, okay, like understand. It's like, what is tempo, right? What is card advantage, and how everything is represented, how everything is on a string. Real nerd stuff. Like, this is like the nerd stuff. Like, nerds play Hearthstone. The nerdiest of nerds want to break down Hearthstone. So
Yeah.
I think that is interesting. And if you're listening to this podcast, you're probably a little bit interested in that as well.
And I definitely learned. So when I played Magic, I was a control player, and so I was obsessed with card advantage. And so when it came into Hearthstone, I was still obsessed with card advantage. And over time, especially with the algorithm, I just learned how important tempo is. Hearthstone's all based on tempo, and it's something I just did not understand when I played Magic. And so I've completely changed my mindset on when I play board games, card games, and everything.
Yeah, it's just when you start digging, like, stuff comes out. I remember in those like 10 2-hour sessions, I gave you a ratio of how I wanted tempo and card advantage and reach and survivability and all these things to be weighed overall in a card's value. And as we've done this more and more, that's not the same percentage that it is now, just as a fundamental matter. And a lot of stuff that I either at the time did not know about or that I had categorized as something else eventually became tempo. Like, eventually became different subcategories of tempos. So it's just the concept of tempo is so hard to define, but so important and so like everywhere.
All right, so we've talked a little bit about sort of like, you know, on big picture, what we've done, and we've talked about how we've worked on it for a long, long time. Let's get to a question that I think a lot of people are thinking about. It's like, wait, why have you just been hiding ZDMan this entire time? Right? Like, what's up with all the secrecy? What's the conspiracy? You know, like give us the Illuminati reveal here. What's going on?
Okay. I mean, it's not like the world's biggest, it's not the most complicated reason. We were under a lot of pressure back when this first started to be putting out an actual drafter. And arena drafts already existed as like a UI and a drafter system. And so we were going to announce ZDMan officially once the two systems converged. But then it got really deep, and I think starting from about 2 years ago, we stopped talking about it because we knew that the drafter wasn't like anywhere on the near horizon. And I think at that point, we should have just revealed ZDMan, but we just kind of kept doing what we were already doing, and no one talked about it, and it didn't get brought up. And then now with the new game mode coming out, right? It's kind of like, is Arena actually dead?
Yeah.
Like, if Arena is dead and this came up again, we're like, oh right, yeah, you know, we should actually formally announce ZDMan. And so that's kind of what we're doing now. But there was a reason way back when, and then we kind of just all forgot about that reason when it became inapplicable.
Well, you can think about it as like, you know, we all had you know, everything set up in terms of the confetti and the spotlight, and Scott was just waiting, you know, behind the curtains and waiting for the big reveal. And it was just Blizzard just kept on throwing changes, like big changes to the arena. For example, synergy picks, and then buckets. And then those things like fundamentally change. And also, it at no point during these 4 years did they sort of, you know, they changed stuff, but they never really backed up Arena. They never really gave it support. Like what we see with BGs right now, you know that BGs are going to be around and they're going to support it, and they want to do everything possible to get people interested in BGs. We also never saw that with Arena, so it was just like, okay, well, they keep on changing the foundations of Arena, which, okay, great, but they're not really giving it support. They're just turning it into Tavern Brawl. So Scott basically was just like behind the curtains, just still waiting. It's like, oh, we're going to reveal this. Oh, it's going to be great. We're going to do a drafter. But no,
no. We were always a couple steps behind on the schedule, and Blizzard kept pushing it farther and farther out. But at this point, it's like, to do a new expansion, Scott, how much work do we put into it, like overall now, to do a normal expansion? Like, let's say Descent of Dragons.
It's a lot less than it used to be. I'd guess it's got to be less than 40 hours now. Probably 30 to 40 hours.
Okay, so 30 to 40 hours for you.
Yeah.
And probably like less than 20 hours for me. Maybe like 15 hours for me. And then Merps, like 5 hours?
Yeah, 5 to 10, depending on the complexity of cards.
Yeah.
And, some expansions are a lot more. No, it's not.
Yeah, we're talking about a normal expansion. It gets to be more if it's something like the big changes, right? Like Ashes of Outlands, I think, took more than 30, 40 hours because we were doing like stuff. that we just went down. Blizzard keeps dragging. So here's what Blizzard does. Okay, this was annoying about them doing the algorithm, because it's annoying because we're fundamentally wrong. But I keep bringing up this example because it's the most fitting one. Where like we're Newton, we figured out gravity, but we're wrong. And then Einstein comes along and says, oh, but this is actually how this thing works. And Einstein's right. Like, our equations worked fine for everything we knew. But then Blizzard comes along, plops down, like, freaking, like, what is that card? The 10/10 Divine Shield Reborn guy?
Colossus of the Moon.
Colossus of the Moon. And we're like, oh, crap. Our fundamental things, like, I don't know, like size and delay of tempo and just pretty fun, because that's not a terribly complicated card on its face, but it stretches what we like deal with about all sorts of things like to its absolute extreme. And we're like, you know what? Newton was actually wrong. You can't just take Newton's equations and apply them and then have a good answer when you go to space and do random stuff. And Blizzard just keeps doing that one after another. And we just keep realizing that we're wrong. I mean, we're right for what we did before, but that it's wrong on a fundamental level. And so we then have to go change it. So every time we have to go change that, it takes a little bit more time. That's when I like stay up at night. Like Brand New thinks I'm crazy. I'm just like literally like staring off into nothingness. Like, you know, like the meme where like there's like numbers and stuff going by someone's head and they're like gesturing in front of a board. That's like what I do literally. I'm just like pacing, or I'm lying on my bed and I'm like just waving my hand in front to like move an idea or a thought from one side to the other as I try to like figure out why things aren't working. And then I like panically send Scott some messages that's like, try this. What do these cards come out as now? If we like, instead of using this equation, move this to over here and do a 1- and root it instead of dividing it. And then after a bit, Scott gets me my answers. I'm like, oh no, don't do that, dude. That's wrong. That's all wrong.
Yeah. So you're comparing yourself to like Newton and everything, but really you're the Charlie from Always Sunny in Philadelphia,
exactly,
with the Pepe Sylvia. You're that guy, just drawing lines and then freaking out about Pepe Sylvia when he never actually existed. So that's really you.
Can't argue with that.
No,
we are doing this to a children's card game.
It is true. Okay. So we should talk about the algorithm, because we've mentioned it a lot. We should dig into it. What do you guys, because really you guys work on it. I'm just a pretty face. What do you guys want to talk
about? Before we talk more about the algorithm, let's talk about the change that's happening, right? Like DQA is getting nerfed, guys. This was announced. I don't have a whole list of changes in front of me, but I think ZDMan has a list of the old numbers and the new numbers. But one of the changes is Dragon Queen Alexstrasza. That's the major one that everyone's happy about. It's getting nerfed from the dragons that it generates, costing 0 mana, which means you can play it immediately, to costing 1 mana. Now, Dragon Queen Alexstrasza is 9 mana, so you can still play one of them if you play this on turn 10. But if you play it on turn 9, now you can't play it. And you can only play one of the dragons, even if it's turn 10. So that's a pretty big nerf. And we had Dragon Queen Alexstrasza like a 140 something. And what's the new number for Dragon Queen Alexstrasza?
107.
107. That's like a Yeti now. Just so you guys like know. And this is from the perspective of drafting a normal deck. So if you're at the end of a draft and you don't have like duplicates, it would obviously be worth more. If you are in the beginning of a draft and you have no duplicates, you're going to build your whole deck around Dragon Queen Alexstrasza, that's going to be worth more. But it's still not going to be insane. Now, you guys know I've always been shitting on Dragon Queen Alexstrasza for basically since it came out. But it really, like, this is quite a significant nerf. Like, we moved it down like almost 40 points, like 30 something, 35, 36 points, something like that.
Yeah, well, it makes a huge difference of you being able to play a 9-mana 8/8 plus, on average, just 2 other super huge cards, right? Like just 2 other, I don't know, like on average, what, 7/7-ishes, with possible effects on them as well. And you, on turn 9, only being able to play a 9-mana 8/8 with value, really good value. But that one turn means everything. That one turn is life and death So
especially because that Dragon Queen Alexstrasza, the main body, just doesn't do anything, right?
No,
It's just
yeah,
AoE.
you're relying on the other cards to do something. DQA doesn't do anything. So now it is like, what can you compare it to? It's like a better Nefarian or a better Archthief Rafam kind of thing.
Yeah.
Like where, yeah, you get value off of it, and you get that reduction in cost. But for example, like Nefarian, you get spells which have initiative. Here, you get minions, and they're really cheap, but you might not get things that actually do things immediately, which is a problem.
Yeah. What's the other one? There was the Demon Hunter weapon's also getting nerfed.
The Warglaze of Azzinoth.
Yes, Warglaze of Azzinoth. How's that getting nerfed, Scott?
Minus 52 points, so it's 115 now.
Damn. Okay, so that went from like a 170 kind of weapon to 115, which makes sense because that's the Fool's Bane weapon. That Demon Hunters
It used to be a 5-mana 3/4. Whenever it attacks a minion, you can attack again. So better than a Fool's Bane because it can also attack face. You just have to attack minions first.
Yes.
And now it is.
It's also better than a Fool's Bane because the hero power for the Demon Hunter just stacks on top of it.
Right. It's good. And now it is above average, but it is no longer amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And someone in chat is talking about Metamorphosis. Yep, Metamorphosis is a legendary, but that's also getting nerfed. It's getting nerfed so that it deals 1 less damage, right?
Yeah. It now deals 4 damage instead of 5 damage, and you still get 2 uses out of it, but
it's no longer a Pyroblast.
No, it's no longer a Pyroblast.
And how much did that drop?
27 points, so it's 160.
160. So it's still really insane. It's still it was almost 200. It's now 160 something. You should still pick it. It's flexible, right? You could use it as removal. You could use it as not a Pyroblast, but 8 damage to the face is pretty damn good too.
Yeah. So it's still pretty good. The problem really is right now, like after they after the initial onslaught of Demon Hunters in the arena, in which they just beat everyone, Blizzard hit them hard with the nerfs and the micro adjust. It's not just nerfs, right? In constructed, nerfs are nerfs. They nerf cards. In arena, unfortunately, they macro adjusted them down significantly so. And on top of that, they just kept on chipping away at their cards, and this is just a continuation of that as well. So their cards just keep on getting worse and worse, and unless they significantly adjust Demon Hunters up by increasing their class cards appearance, increasing the amount of good cards that they just get, it's going to be a really, really tough time for Demon Hunters, which I think as of right now are 38% win rate. They're 38.8% win rate. It's disgustingly low. We're talking about, sort of like one of the worst classes of all times in, relative to the meta. There's not been many times in which a class has been lower than 38%.
Maybe the patch will come with a micro adjust.
Macro adjust.
Well, we're hoping. All right. Any other important cards in this nerf? They nerfed a bunch of other cards, none of which I thought was terribly important, but I may be missing something.
There's like the Galakron stuff.
Yeah, like that's not an arena.
Yeah, the Warrior card. Scott, you want to talk about that?
It dropped 71 points. 73 now.
Which card was this?
Corsair Cash.
Oh, that's right. I forgot about that. Corsair's Cash. Yeah, so that's the one that's 2 mana, and you draw a weapon from your deck, and you give it +1/+1. Now you're only giving it 1 durability. So that's a huge difference, right?
Yeah, it's definitely a huge difference in terms of because what you paid to draw it before, it made it kind of worth it, right? And now it's really not worth the what you're paying for it. Like the extra durability is good, but attack is worth so much more because you're already paying in order to get it, right? You're behind.
You're behind on tempo, and the attack helps you catch up on tempo.
Yeah, the durability is something in which you don't you don't realize the value of that extra durability until, let's say, 3 turns later, right? Or maybe 2 turns later, because you're going to swing and everything. So the value of the durability is so much lower than the value of the attack, which you can use immediately and on the following next turn immediately as well. So it just hurts it a ton.
Yeah, it's still a great card, right? It ends at a 117, you said, Scott?
Wait, Corsair Cash?
Yeah.
73.
Oh, crap. It's down to a 73? Jeez, I thought it went down 73 points.
No, I wouldn't.
It went down 71 points.
Oh, okay. So it went down 71 points to be at a 73.
Yes.
Would you still take? I wouldn't take it.
Well, it lets you more consistently draw a weapon, right? So if you have enough weapons in your deck, it's a thing. I mean, I don't think it's good value. You wouldn't pay 2 mana to get an extra durability on a weapon. That's crazy. But so that's why the value is so low. But I could see myself still picking it here and there if I think I need the weapon draw consistency. But it's the same way as Forge of whatever, right? I think it's a more flexible version of Forge of whatever for less
Forge of
value.
Souls.
Yeah. Because Forge of Souls will draw you 2 weapons. This will only draw you 1. Which is a huge difference, and it costs the same amount of mana. But it fills the same function, right? Sometimes you're just I want my weapon.
Well, the thing with Forge of Souls was oftentimes in a meta that had weapons like Death's Bite and what was it? The Razor weapon, which does AoE damage, So the value of weapons, especially if you're just drawing one weapon, you eat a lot of times you might not draw the weapon that you want. With Forge of Souls, a lot of times you're drawing the weapon that you want, and those weapons which deal AoE damage are really, really good for warriors.
This is a pretty crappy meta for weapons.
It's a pretty because the weapons all do the same thing for warriors. It's just one big meaty weapon or a more small/medium-sized weapon. But yeah, you're looking at Fiery War Axes, Gorehouse, Arcanite Reapers, a lot of Arathi Weaponsmiths. You're going to be able to draft a lot of those.
Also, Gnargs get in the way of stuff. It's just
exactly.
The best.
No, they're just vanilla weapons. Now, obviously, warriors are number one for a reason. Weapons are really good, but part of the reason that a meta in which we had Forge of Souls, why was that good? Because you had Blood Razors and because you had Death's Bite, sometime within that period of time, and that would boost the value of Forge of Souls significantly.
Yeah. Okay. I think that pretty much wraps it up. You guys can go look at the blog for all the other because there's a few more cards that they lowered. Do you wanna run through them, Scott? Because I know you have the list.
Yeah. So we got Fungal Fortunes, which is a 65, dropped 6 points. Dragoncaster is 56 points. It dropped 12. Kane's Sun Fury is 107, dropped 20 points.
Oh yeah, that's right. That's a legendary. That was the 3/5 charge that gave everybody charge. Now it's a 3/4. So, and it's no longer a 4-drop. So that hurt it a lot.
Mm-hmm. That's the last one.
And that's the last one. Okay. So yeah, that's the patch that's coming. So I guess let's go back to the actual algorithm and how these numbers happen. Because right now, right, what happens when you change the mana cost of something is, for the most part, what Scott has to do is to go in and change it from 5 mana to 6 mana. Sometimes we need an additional change onto the curve side. Every now and then, if you're changing the actual ability, we'd have to change the ability. But it's all kind of it's a lot simpler now than because you kind of plug it in, right? Besides the debugging, the work is really just to make sure we put the thing in correctly and we're not missing any kind of effects. But from its base, this is interesting to me too, Scott. How would you describe what the algorithm does? Because I've had to do it a number of times, and I have my own spiel of what the algorithm does. But wow.
I would say there's two major parts that it works off of, and it's partly to do with how we created it. So the first part is we calculate what we expect the card to be worth on a particular turn that you would play it, irrelevant to what's in your deck and other cards in your hand. Just kind of a guess based on a bunch of factors on if you played it on turn 6, what would it be worth?
Mm-hmm.
And so then we calculate all those values and we save those. And then the second part is and this is a separate part because we added it at a much later point, where we kind of you kind of play out a game. You have the cards in your hand, and we determine what's the best turn to play it, and what the penalties of holding it, what it might be worth later versus other cards in your hand. And we try to pick out what probability on each turn that gets played based on when you drew it and then when you play it, and then try to add or take away value based on that kind of logic.
Yeah, okay, that's a way better description than I usually give. I mean, not surprisingly. But so a lot of like the inputs for this kind of stuff, when you're not talking about any particular card, is that we have something that's calculating how the board state looks, or rather, how various board states would look on any particular turn. That like changes or scales with what kind of cards you're putting into your deck, which, because we don't have a drafter, we don't know what cards you're putting into the deck. We just assume based on offering odds, the kind of decks that, and not just offering odds, but also like how likely you are to actually pick the card based on our own tier list valuations to kind of like make to create a deck for our opponent and for us, right? And we're not Monte Carloing anything, but we're calculating everything out. And so you have all these factors that are coming into play. So a lot of the times when people are like, oh, why is this, look at this, or why is this like this? You have a system that's like calculating how long you're waiting with a card, what you're trying to hit in order to play the card, how much value that is, versus how much value you lose by holding on to it. Because you lose tempo effectively every time you don't play a card, right? Like an extra option in your hand is not worth anything if you don't actually use it. Based on the board state. And then it's also figuring out, because you know what's in your deck, what you're trying to like hit potentially by holding it to give it even extra value. It's also figuring out how fast the game is even going. So like when the turns even matter, we literally have a system that's called Turns Matter, which calculates this came in maybe like 2 years ago, when we realized that and I think this may have been the same time as the Colossus issue. I think this may have been actually added because of Colossus, is we realized we were calculating value as if every turn mattered. And not every turn matters, because the game eventually ends. And so we added a whole thing that now runs through everything, because Colossus of the Moon was getting way too high of a score because it's assuming the thing uses up all of its value. And it doesn't, right? You die or they die, because Colossus of the Moon has no taunt, has no whatever. And then we have to figure out how each particular card changes the turn that it matters. Like if you have a taunt, they have to get through it to kill you most of the time. So it matters more, right? Anything with initiative will matter more. Like tempo and card advantage matters differently. Like all sorts of stuff. But yeah, that's a nice way to connect back to Colossus of the Moon and why that was such a problem for us, not just with card advantage.
And I think we added that because when we first started, most games ended pretty quickly. Like by turn 10, the game was usually kind of done.
It was the GBG meta, basically, right? It was BRM, but it was basically the GBG
And so
meta.
each set just kept getting slower and slower, and the numbers started getting more lopsided. And then here comes this extreme case that just like ridiculously showed up. It was way off. And then when we made the adjustment, we realized all these other cards were way off also, because it just had creeped up on us.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's what, like, Blizzard keeps dropping stuff like that on us, and then you got to figure it out. Okay. So, what was your experience in actually creating the algorithm? Like, what language is the algorithm? I get asked this now and then. What language is the algorithm in? And, like, let's start there.
Okay, the algorithm is written in C#, if anyone is familiar with that. And then if anyone's curious, the website the back end is C#, but the front end is AngularJS.
Okay.
I know what that means.
Somebody out there might know.
I don't know what this means at all, but good job. Thank you, Scott.
Some people in chat are very excited that it's in C#.
C#.
So what okay. So when you started working on this, let's talk about how you felt as this, because I talked some about how this thing kept developing and how we kept like digging in. But like when you started like actually working on the algorithm, like after we were done with the website part, like did you just like know you can do it? Did you like were there moments where you're like, oh my god, this is getting like too complicated, or like this just isn't going to work?
No. As far as difficulty, it's well within. I wouldn't say it's that hard for. Like, I have a degree in computer science. I have a minor in math. Like, I have a education background to totally be able to handle this. Most of it is just process and knowledge transfer. So it's getting what you're thinking in a way where I can translate into code, and then that never matched up for a very long time. So it was constantly me going back and redoing parts and trying to get it closer to what you thought it was and what I thought it was, and getting that back together. But as far as the math and the coding, it was moderate to moderate hard, but nothing really hard.
That's good. And there's also potential issues with like how much time it takes to calculate. I remember at one point I wanted to make a change, and you're like, "Yeah, that's gonna make this thing take 3 days to calculate," and I'm like, "Okay, we're not making that change then."
And that all goes back to, like I said, it was calculated in 2 parts, and it probably shouldn't be. That has been the bane of our existence since it started. And so I would say a good chunk of our time is finding workarounds to that limitation.
Yeah, that's why it's going under a rewrite. So like before we put it into a drafter, it has to go under a rewrite so that it's actually doing it correctly. And it is in 2 parts because like that's entirely my fault. Because the thing that I created in my head was not that complicated until we worked on it for like 6 months. And then I'm like, oh, this just isn't going to work if we don't make it more complicated. And so we made it more complicated, and that split it into 2 parts, and we've been like dealing with it since. But yeah, I remember when we first caught that issue, which had to do with needing to know what turn cards are being played on, and that started like between the time when we realized we needed to know what turn the card is played on in order to adjust the scores until now, that system itself has gotten so freaking complicated. But even at the time, just figuring that, I was like, oh crap, this whole thing may not work. Like, not from a technical perspective necessarily, but just from a calculation perspective. I'm like, I had never thought about this in a way that was going to move the scores by more than like 5 points. And it turned out that it was moving all sorts of things in all sorts of different ways. And so it really, like, it took me a while to figure out like exactly how those formulas are supposed to work and how they affected each other, like, and how, like, what the point of a turn is.
But so on your comment on how long it takes, majority of the cards take like 3 or 4 minutes to calculate, and then like a handful of cards is the rest of it. So it's just and it's not that they're supposed to be that long. It's just the way we've done it has caused problems that it's doing kind of needless recalculations, and there's no good way to fix it without a rewrite. So we're just gonna have to live with it.
Yep. What was the hardest to program system? Like in the whole thing.
I had to write that down. What did I say? Oh, it is that thing that you were talking about. Calculating when the best time to play a card.
Oh.
That's by far the most complicated part in the whole system. There's a ton of factors that go into it. And so it's hard to keep it all in your head when you're dealing with it.
Oh, this also happens a lot. where we get to something, we're like, huh, is this right? Okay, Scott, tell me what the system is doing. Followed by Scott doing like half an hour's worth of like debugging work on like a particular concept. And he's like, oh, so here's what it's all doing. And I'm like, okay, but what does that mean? And he's like, okay. There's another half hour figuring out what that thing was doing. And these are all like, I mean, they're not the most basic concepts, but they're like stuff, because just Hearthstone has so many things. So whenever they, like, we can't keep it all in either of our heads, the entire world of what all the cards have done. And so there's also a lot of time debugging like what the system's actually doing.
And there's a big mixture of things that we did right and things that we made it right enough to deal with whatever situation we did.
Yeah.
And so a lot of times we go back and maybe there's a new card that really needs this thing, but we have to remember what we did and understand and then redo it in a way that's more flexible.
Yeah. What was the biggest well, I wrote here what's the biggest bug, but not like bug, just what was the most like, what was the thing that was causing the most problems to our earlier scores, I guess, that we made the changes. I'm thinking of like, I'll answer this one actually. This is like, I remember that we used to have like a minion's like attack or health be worth a certain number of points. And then we got, and in the beginning it was like, oh, it's going to be worth more points if you have like more health. Like an attack is worth more if there's more health attached to it, because obviously like a 3/7 is going to be worth more than a 2/7, but a 3/7 is going to be worth even more than like the difference between a 3/4 and a 2/4, at least played off curve. And then from there you go like, okay, so if it also has initiative, like let's say it's a rush or charge card. At the time there was no rush, so if it was a charge card, you also add some possible reach. We have various reach concepts. So you add like the particular reach concepts into it, and then you also, it's initiative, right? So you add a whatever multiplier. And eventually we strung all that together because we realized that everything was connected. And so the stats on a minion is really just a different form of doing rush, but being frozen for a turn. Build the freezing concept in. Whether it's rushing or dealing direct damage is the same as dealing with a taunt. We built that concept, like we connected those concepts in. Freeze, taunt, stealth, any kind of targeting, rush was the same as a weapon. Weapons all have rush. You go a couple steps deeper, so what's a removal, right? A removal is just a rush that doesn't get affected by a taunt. And then all of a sudden, all the systems are connected in, and nothing's using a multiplier anymore. What are buffs, right? Buffs just have initiative, but you need a target. But if you don't have a target, then it has no initiative, and then it's just regular dumb stats that you put on something. But then you have to be able to like either have a minion or be able to play a minion on the same turn, and there's some if-thens in there. But like right now, we are not just like to move from all those separate concepts that in the very beginning I just gave a multiplier to that made sense to me, and that worked within the main world of Hearthstone, into what it is now, which is not, it doesn't have multipliers anymore. All the multipliers essentially are connected. All of them are scaling off of like 3 to 4 different things, and we can, like, if we need to, we can change one assumption and all the systems will pretty much connect. Asterisk, I'm sure there's like one system in there that doesn't connect that we'd have to go in and like fix by hand. But that to me was like one of the, not like the biggest change, but one of the biggest, like, it felt good because it made everything make more sense and maintain its elegance and simplicity in a way where originally, like, I knew there were connected concepts, but I thought they would just have different multipliers. But they're all just one thing.
Yeah, and it took us a while to fix it because we went at it backwards, like you said. We had the multipliers before, and then we went back and we fixed one thing, and then we fixed another one, realizing it's the same as this other one, and we just kind of branched out and fixed all these other parts.
Yeah, and all this stuff was done in like the first 2 years. Since then, we've done some upgrades. Colossus of the Moon was the last like huge upgrade, and the one that we just did in June was the one that that better dealt with the concept of waiting. and looking for cards or looking for opponents' targets. But a lot of these basic concepts were in the algorithm after like basically around like the 1 year mark, if not earlier. But it was a learning process. I learned a lot from like just working through it.
I remember our biggest issue before a launch. What was that mechanic called? The one that changes while it's in your hand.
That changes. Oh, the one that flips. The 6/2 versus 2/6.
The one that like gets better.
Oh, Spellstones.
Spellstones.
Oh god.
It was literally night before I had implemented
God.
an implementation for Spellstone, and then the numbers were off, and we were going, and then there was this last minute like, no, it has to work this way, and I was like, the system just can't do it.
Yeah. Yeah, I remember that. Like to this day, Spellstones are not being done super smartly. I mean, each particular version of a Spellstone is done totally fine, but which version of the Spellstone gets used, like that's not. Yeah, like that's still we're still feeding it percentages that are calculated now, but calculated through like a like almost like a hacky kind of way, rather than how they should be done, which is like knowing what's going on with the board, and like, you know, let's say you're a hunter, right? How many secrets you've played with this spellstone in your hand for so long, whether you should wait to like get another secret to play. Like it's not doing all that. It's just like taking some favorable assumptions of how your game is going and based on offering odds. Yeah. Oh, Spellstone.
Yeah.
All right. You guys have been talking about just a lot of nerd stuff. Let's bring it back out a little bit. How about that?
Yeah.
All right. So Scott, look, you've worked on Hearthstone a lot. You've played Hearthstone some.
Yeah.
But look, in terms of the arena, what are you hoping for from Blizzard? Like, what are you hoping that they do in terms of changes and updates?
I mean, it goes back to the original thing of having progress. It is, to me, the single worst part about arena is that there's no sort of leadership. There's no number that you can say I'm better this month than I was last month, unless you physically go and track it somehow. And there's no way to have tournaments. There's no way to have feel like you're competing. The game is fine as it is. If you had that, then there's other things that you could say, oh, it would make the game better. But that is just a big gap for me.
Yeah. I think it could just be summed up to they haven't really done anything to improve the arena experience, right? In terms of like anything outside of the game itself, as in like putting more cards in or anything. And we can look at BGs in terms of BGs. It already has a live leaderboard that, you know, you can track and everything. And I understand, you know, there's some difficulties with that for arena. It doesn't have to update every 5 minutes. Maybe update once a day, or just let you track internally, which BGs also does. It has a stats page.
Oh, it's a terrible stats page.
Oh, it's terrible, but it's a stats page.
It exists.
Is like a running average, and then you have some numbers that you can compare, and you say, hey, I'll go to Reddit and say, here's my numbers, what's y'all's? And then you can compare, and then you can even compare from yourself last month, and you know, I'm improving, and I'm, you know, set a goal for yourself.
Yep. So look, the things that you're asking for, I think are a lot of things that people want. It's just like, show that you give a damn. Show that you give a damn about arena. That's step number one. And that's just the most important thing. And you haven't done that for years now. Like for years and years now. If you guys aren't aware, there was another interview with Blizzard this past week where the interviewers asked a question about arena. The first line was, we haven't forgotten about arena. And the second sentence was, but I'm gonna paraphrase it. By the way, we're coming out with a new game mode, and it's gonna be.
But that's what we. That's
insulting.
I mean, that's what we expected. We've been expecting this since they announced the new game mode. I don't know that it's. I feel like that's the company line, right? That's what the person who responded to this is Alec Dawson. He's a developer, not like a balanced developer, but like an ideas, like the fun creative side of Blizzard's their initial like creative team. And he works there now, but he was a host of the Golden Wisp, like, you know, and we used to live in New York together, like we hung out now and then. Really cool guy, like awesome guy, and that's the company line.
Oh yeah,
they're not like he didn't come up with it in his head. Right. Like this is what Blizzard is saying, and they've been consistent with it since they've announced this. Well, vaguely announced this new game mode and stopped arena activities.
All right, there's a lot of people that are in the public eye, you know, and it's easy for a lot of people to think it's like, oh, Merps' criticisms are directed towards those people. And look, no, this is Blizzard. What I'm targeting is the entity that is, and you can say it's Activision, you can say it's Team 5, whatever. I don't exactly know what's going on. But whatever decision-making process is going on in Blizzard is flawed. And I certainly don't want to shoot the messenger, you know, because a lot of times you see people such as, you know, Alec Dawson, you see Celestalon, you see Ixar as messengers.
Yeah.
And
sometimes you can tell that they're like saying their own stuff, right, but like sometimes it's just like that's the company line. And
right. So no, I'm glad you mentioned this because I think it's easy for a lot of people. It's like, oh man, Merps really hates Alec. No. This is me criticizing Blizzard generally, and I think we can all agree on that.
I don't even know if it's like, and that's also what I mean, right? I don't even know if it's like we should criticize Blizzard for it, like at this point in time, in that it's the same criticism of Blizzard for like since they got rid of buckets without replacing it with anything, and basically said, all right, let's just keep Arena here for a while, and then they're like, hey, there's this new game mode, and every time anyone brings up Arena, they're like, hey, there's this new game mode. And they're just doing it again. And this new game mode, by the way, should be out any day now, right? Like, it's supposed to come out before or around the next expansion, and the next expansion should be out sometime in August. So it's coming.
It's coming. I am looking forward to it though, because it's something in which, if they're going to make a really cool limited game mode that will have support behind it, great. That's fantastic. I look forward to playing it because Scott, you know, you were talking about you like drafting, you like limited gameplay, the same as you know, the two of us, and I think for our viewers out there and for our listeners, it's like we enjoyed this, right? We enjoyed the drafting, we enjoyed the sort of rogue-like experience of, you know, no run is ever really the same. And if they're able to replicate that, that's fantastic. The problem is we just don't know anything about it. And the only thing that we do know is it involves your collection somehow, which immediately is like, oh, wait, well, it's not exactly the most encouraging thing if we wanted a true limited mode.
Yep.
And to me, it's surprising on the Arena not having progress is like, I think about any other Blizzard game and they all have some sort of progress indicator that you have, that you're getting better. You're like Diablo, it's all over the place. Just, I can't, everything is always competitive or progress. Even if you're a single player, you have levels, you have progress that you are getting better, that your numbers are going higher. And Arena is like the only thing I can think of that they have that doesn't do that.
Yep. And for the longest time, it didn't even count towards your like golden portrait, which was annoying because now I have no golden portraits because I've like since they made the change, I haven't played as much Arena. But definitely should have golden portraits if Blizzard just actually did that from the beginning, like they should have.
All right, so I think that's enough talk about Hearthstone.
Yeah,
I don't know. That's kind of as much as I want to talk about Hearthstone. We should also mention some of the other people that worked on this project, right?
Mm-hmm.
Who are not here today, but definitely contributed to the project. So, who do you guys want to thank?
HT Rajan, you guys may know him from back in the day. He was a regular Patreon, and then he also worked on the project of a bunch of the website features, and some of the stuff that you don't see also was done by him from like this was like 3 years ago, maybe.
It was a while ago.
It was a while ago, and then he moved on to like he got a job and a side hustle, I think, and so he left the team for to move on to better things, and also who else was involved? We had someone else for a very short period of time. Philip. We had Philip S. I don't want to disclose his last name. He worked on like a few things for us for a brief period of time when we were looking for a front end developer. So but it was like 95-99% Scott who's doing the technical things of the algorithm.
It was we've tried a few times, and it's just so hard to have someone else come in to. The algorithm is not elegantly written. We don't have it perfectly documented, and it took a lot of time to, for me to understand cell levels. So it's hard for someone to just drop in and be able to make changes and understand what's going on.
Yeah. A lot of people offer to help, and they're like, "Yeah, I want to work on the algorithm," and it's like it's not possible. It's just going to like it takes so much time and so much investment into a person to make them like even remotely fluent in how this algorithm functions, both on the core concepts and how we programmed it. That it's just it's hard to do. Like when we have one person like Scott, we can just keep it all in Scott's head, and then I can just communicate with him, and just to get over the hump of the inefficiencies that's going to be caused by a second person. And then the amount of time, like I said, just to teach a new person how this algorithm functions from a non-technical perspective, just from how we view the game of Hearthstone and other kind of like card games, that takes like a whole month of like 8-hour work days on business days to just do. So it's gonna be hard. I remember when Gods Unchained was asking me like what it would take to have them understand my system, and I just laid it out for them. I'm like, look, this is what it's gonna take, and they're like, that's a lot. And I'm like, that's why I'm just doing this and giving you the results. Like that's why we can't get down to the nuts and bolts of how things are explained. But if anybody out there is at all willing to or want to be a part of the project and help out on the front end stuff, or on other things that's not like the direct algorithm related things, there's arena drafts, which ZDMan is doing, and that could always use upgrades. Our tier list and its presentation, because we have so much information in this freaking algorithm, and we're just presenting it the same as any other tier list. But we can present so much more information. Like I don't think it'll be too hard to just tell people like how much like reach or tempo or card advantage it is. It would not take that much to be able to tell people, for example, like have a filter that says like aggro, right? If I'm going to draft an aggro deck, or a normal or control or whatever, or maybe have a slider, and then be able to give people a completely different tier list based on the style that they want to draft. I don't think that's hard at all or not hard. It'll probably take a lot of work, but it's not like conceptually difficult to do. Like there's stuff to be done, and we would really appreciate some help if anyone's interested in taking this on as a side project for the long term. Just wanted to throw it out there. It's not a great offer. It's really for people who are just interested in this stuff, because we run on. Are we losing money? I don't think we're not losing money anymore, are we?
I think we're back to losing money.
We're back to losing money. We're gonna try to stop losing money again. We were making a tiny bit of money for a little bit, but that's just because we just have ads on the website, and it's just a one-page website. So we may want to try to figure out a way to expand that website to also just provide more information, right? So if anyone's interested, feel free to contact me, grinninggoatgaming@gmail.com. You can find the contact information on our Twitch page as well. We would love to have some help because there's always like an onboarding process. Like really, it's for people who are like interested in this and will do this for like a long period of time. Maybe not necessarily like 4 years, but like if you're like, oh, I have a summer free. I don't know that there's just too much work for us to onboard.
Wow, who wouldn't want to work close up with Adulta? Oh man.
Well, you'd be working with Scott, who's way nicer and easier to work with than me. Although you'd be working with me too on the like substance of like how to present the scores, but on the tech side it would be all Scott. I don't know much about the tech side.
That's fair. All right. We should also address, I think, a big question that people have, and we sort of addressed it before, but let's just talk about it directly. Is a drafter happening? Huh?
Scott, is a drafter happening?
Maybe.
That's probably the best answer we can give. We need to do a rewrite of the algorithm, which we will do as soon as Blizzard shows an interest in the arena again. It's been on pause, like actual pause, rather than just moving slowly. Since Blizzard announced that they were going to, like, literally since August or September, whenever they announced that they were getting rid of buckets without doing anything else. That was kind of our signal that they're shutting down the arena for the time being, like, or putting it on freeze, and so we're doing the same thing. But once we have the rewrite, then the drafter wouldn't be too difficult to do. We already know what we have to do for the drafter. We've talked it through. We have plans and a good amount, I think, if not most of the formulas it takes to actually make the drafter. It's just like right now, I think if we made the drafter, it just wouldn't even work fast enough for anyone to like use.
Yeah, it would. It's unfeasible at the current state.
Yeah.
The rewrite I've done testing and would be much quicker, and it'll actually give a little bit different scores because it'll be calculating slightly differently.
Okay.
But it'll be more adapted to your deck and that kind of stuff. It is a 100% complete rewrite, and Blizzard has made drastic things that have basically had to drop everything to do that. And then, was it 20 months ago, I had a daughter, and so there was a little bit of a time loss there.
Yeah, that's a little time. There was time loss. Time loss happens everywhere. This is like a passion project. We're not like trying to put this out there and like go public or anything. So we're kind of going on a slow pace, and right now a no pace on this. So we can't say that the drafter is not happening, and we can't say that it is definitely going to happen at some point. But if Blizzard picks it up again and there are people playing the arena, we'll still be working towards the drafter. This is also, like, we talked about how fundamental everything is. Like, we could really apply this to Constructed or whatever new thing that Blizzard's coming out with, this new game mode. If we want to pivot to that direction, it's possible. We looked into doing it for Battlegrounds. It just doesn't make any sense. Like, Battlegrounds moves too fast, and it's way too dependent on like what you have and what you're doing, that I don't know. There are no tier lists out there for Battlegrounds, right? Like, besides hero tier lists? Like, there's no like unit tier lists.
No, we don't need a unit tier list to tell us that Harvest Golem is by far the best tier 2 unit. That's fine.
Yeah. So that's where this is at the moment.
Okay. All right. That's fantastic. This has been extraordinarily interesting for all those true Hearthstone nerds out there. Is there anything else we wanted to talk about outside of Hearthstone?
I'm good. Let me give a quick shout out to our Patreons. Our Patreons from July who really make the Lightforge happen. Thank you guys so much, new and old Patreons alike. Give me 1 second to pull up the list. It's actually like kind of a different list than last month. We usually don't have this much turnover, so we got like a couple new people, and we lost a couple people from the top. So thank you guys, Nora Doge, Changyan 1, Joel T, Joel Turnbull, RB Night Train, Yin, Eric L, 4P, and Brand New. Thank you guys so much for your support. These are our top patrons for July. If you are thinking of becoming a patron, it's patreon.com/grinninggoat. And also, if you want to support Scott and ZDMan directly, the best way to do that is through arena drafts. If you don't know what arena drafts is, it's what we keep putting on, and I think a bunch of other arena streamers also use it for drafting. It's what we put on both like during the draft, where you see the Lightforge tier list numbers, and then it'll save your deck. It'll track your wins and losses. There's a vote function if you have your friends to vote along with it. And that's arena drafts, and that'll eventually become the drafter once we have the drafter ready. But until then, if you go to the arena drafts webpage, you can directly support the arena drafts project, which is really also the Lightforge tier list project, and that'll also be helpful.
Yep. Cool. All right, that's it. Thank you, ZDMan, for joining us. Thank you for the big reveal. Was this reveal everything you imagined it would be?
Yeah. Much as I could hope.
Amazing. Wow. I'm sure this is exactly what you've been building it up as the pinnacle of your life. Nothing will ever be as exciting as this ever again.
Hey.
Okay.
The whatever we were playing, the thing with the phone that you put on your forehead, that was pretty fun.
Oh.
What is that game called?
Heads Up?
Heads Up, there we go. This is how little I like do stuff nowadays. In case you were wondering, like we met up with ZDMan, or Merps has met up with ZDMan a couple of times. I met him for the first time last year. And we play dorky games together. That's what we've been doing.
This is what you do.
This is what we do in our downtime.
You go through 4 years of dealing with adults for an hour of fun recreational games. Definitely not worth it. But anyways, that's it. ZDMan, can't thank you enough for all of your just excellent work, and also just being a very tolerant, patient person dealing with Adulta. So once again, thank you. And we hope that everyone who listened to this was, I thought this was kind of interesting. I don't know. I'm not sure. But I don't know anything about the algorithm anyways. Okay, so Adulta, take us home.
All right. So until next time, this is Adulta.
This is Merps. Bye, guys.